All right. This is the time and the place set forth for the September 11th, 2025 meeting of the City of Boise Ethics Commission. Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Church.
Present.
Howarth.
Present.
Hurwit.
Present.
Talk. Zimmerman.
Present.
4 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. First order of business is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting on May 8th of 2025. Unless there are any comments or questions regarding these minutes, we'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes from, so sorry, I didn't hear the date. I don't have them in front of me.
May 8, 2025.
Thank you, Chair, from May 8th, 2025.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Church.
Yes, aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
Hurwit.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Looks like our next order of business was a request for an advisory opinion received related to the new clubhouse and restaurant facility at the Warm Springs Golf Course. Was there any discussion? Did anyone have any questions or matters they'd like to comment on? Patrick, do you have anything for us on that?
Mr. Chair, I, in my day-to-day job, serve as the HR business partner supporting Parks and Rec. So I have been briefed on the request and have kind of some background on it. If there are questions, happy to kind of speak on behalf of Parks and Rec about that request, but not sure if the commission wants any background from me or.
Chair. I'd like to maybe ask Patrick a couple of questions if he doesn't mind.
Go ahead, Commissioner Church.
Thank you. And thanks, Patrick. When I read this, my original concern was the city's. Could you give me some background on why the city is engaged in operating a restaurant, whereby city employees would be in a position that they would need to be paid in tips in order to avoid turnover? Like, what was the consideration in even engaging in this?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Church. The Warm Springs Golf Course and Quail Hollow Golf Courses are both part of Parks and Rec and are kind of crown jewels of the recreation side of the Parks and Rec operation. And at Quail Hollow, there was an event center. It still is operational as an event center with sort of food options and beverage options. Warm Springs Golf Course has had something to that effect, but it's been a desire by the department and the city for some time to have a more robust clubhouse with a restaurant for the patrons that can also double as an event space. Just by way of example, there's an open house going on at 4 o'clock today until 6 o'clock, where the 2 candidates for Parks and Rec director are meeting with the public and engaging with the public. So it will be used for things like that as well. It's not table service in the same sense as a typical, restaurant might be. It is more you order at the counter and people run the food out to you. There are cooks. There have historically been cooks at the golf courses at both Quail Hollow and Warm Springs. And the practice up until this point has not been to permit tipping. And what's been reported is partly that some of the patrons find that objectionable, that they're not able to tip. And partly that it makes it less competitive as compared to other operations that do offer food. So, in the interest of providing better quality service, retaining talent, and just making it easier to staff that operation, that was where the request came from, to permit tipping as a practice, with the caveat that it be expressly included in the compensation package and not it will also kind of help avoid situations where patrons are attempting to give cash tips or something under the table outside of the sight of anybody, to kind of bring it above board, make it all reported, and just include it as a part of the tax compensation package. I'm not sure if that fully answers the question, but that's sort of the background as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, thank you. So just to that point, are you saying that they would never be allowed to have cash tips? So they would all be recorded, no cash tips would be permitted for these city employees?
I'm not sure that it would be a ban on cash tips. I think cash tips would be permitted, but my understanding of how it works is there's sort of a counter and there might be a tip jar on the counter. It's not actually been fleshed out because it's pending the determination of the commission before they move forward with anything in that regard. I know that the compensation team within human resources is going to be heavily involved in any kind of rollout of a tipping practice. But my understanding is that all tips of all varieties would be recorded. And even though not all the details are fully fleshed out, I believe the vision is more of a tip sharing pool rather than individual employees receiving tips personally. It would be kind of pooled tips, if people wish to do that. And also there's a software, a POS software in place currently that has a toggle built into it where you either have the tip line or not, and currently it's off and there are signs saying no tips. So the request is related to kind of switching that on. And so I believe there would be now a tip option on the check for card transactions, but I don't know that they anticipate a ban on cash tips.
Thank you. And just a comment. I mean, if the problem that this is trying to solve is turnover because people, according to the request, are leaving because they aren't getting tips, and the tipping situation would either be pooled or everything being recorded, I am concerned that a lot of times these positions are, held by young people, and people in our community who may find themselves in an entirely different ethics situation were this to move forward, where if they did not disclose a cash tip, or received, if it was not pooled, one person receiving a lot more tips, how do you break this down into a job description? And then if a person does receive cash tips and it is found out that they did not record it, what kind of HR situation are we putting individuals who we have already stated in the request, think that the amount of money that they're getting paid for the job is currently not, within what they could get other places. It brings a lot of concerns beyond my original concern about the city getting involved in the restaurant business and cash tips or tips at all. But we're here to decide whether, if this goes through, it's ethical to change the job description. Those are kind of some issues I'm having with it. Maybe other commissioners may speak to that or not.
Perhaps, I know, Patrick.
Bit right there. Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear the button. Let me start again. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So this isn't necessarily a question per se, Patrick, but some thoughts that might generate a response from you or some guidance. Given that, this is my first as part of the Ethics Commission inquiry or request, I just want to sort of articulate how I see our role and then go from there, I guess. And so I think piggybacking off Commissioner Church's concerns, there is, the policy question, should the city be doing this? Should the city want to provide tips to employees as part of its compensation package? Then there's the second question, which is a tax question, which is how does that get accounted for either by the city as the employer or as the individual employees? And then I think there's a question for us, which is, does going down this road violate the ethics code? And so to me, and this is where I guess feedback would be helpful, I don't see our role as opining on the first two questions. Should the city be doing this? I don't know that we're asked that. And two, if it does do this, what are the tax ramifications, for example? I don't think that's our role either. So to me, when I read the packet, the question was, does the city's intent to address this issue by permitting tips as part of a city employee's compensation package violate 1.1-8-5B of the city ethics code? And I'll just read it, which prevents city officials from receiving or soliciting any money in any amount in addition to that received as wages or salary by the city official. So that's to me what I'm prepared to, I guess, discuss and vote on or request more information about. Having said all that, I think there are legitimate questions about this whole setup. So Patrick or my fellow commissioners, perhaps you can advise me on, do I have this right about what the question is, or do we have a broader discussion that we can get into?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hurwitz, I would say that tracks my understanding. And if there's more background that I could provide, there's not been, to my knowledge, any decision made as yet regarding the tipping question, and nothing has been put in place. And as we sit here today, tips are not permitted. My understanding is more that before that is even on the table as an option, in pursuit of due diligence and just, above board operations, the department wants to ensure that that wouldn't be a violation of the ethics code to begin with, because were it a violation of the code, that would make it a non-starter.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Patrick, for that explanation.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hurwitz, thank you for that kind of run through. And I completely agree that the question before us is if HR determines that tipping is part of a package, does it violate the code of ethics? Yes, I think that is what we're discussing. It was just a interest to me to find us in this situation to begin with. So to that question, if the employee as part of their compensation package has tipping, and I don't quite know how, to what extent tipping, I think is an interesting question. Like, is there going to be a cap on it? Will it, exceeding X amount of dollars an hour? I'm not sure. But I suppose in that consideration, as long as it was part of the employee's official package, I don't see that it would violate anything. So I'd love to see that language.
And Mr. Chair, if I might add on to that,
Please.
thank you, Commissioner Church. I agree, in principle with the conclusion and the draft analysis that's before us. And I think it's clear from the intent of the ethics code that this is not the type of solicitation that was conceived of as unethical when the code was written. So I think in principle, I would vote, I guess, to get there. I do have a legal question that maybe Patrick or another attorney has looked at. I think the way that section 1.-8-5B is written, there could be a sort of a pesky semantic issue with respect to tips, because the language is, in addition to that being compensation received as wages or salary by the city official. So I was poking around a little bit with IRS forms, so I'm not a tax lawyer, so I think I know enough to be dangerous. Tips are generally reportable as income, just like wages or just as salary, but I haven't seen a definition that says tips are part of wages or tips are part of salary. So, I think in an ideal world, the section we're talking about would read, compensation received as wages, tips, or salary, so that we're talking about sort of the full compensation package. So that hopefully I'm making sense, but that's the only kind of potential wrinkle or hangup I see in the approval of, or the approval of an opinion, or I guess the approval of a denial of an advisory opinion on this issue, given that we would not theoretically find that it violates the code. It's just the definition of tips, and does it match the code language that exists?
Thank you, Commissioner Hurwitz. I believe, just based on my understanding, that at this point, what would be appropriate would be to leave to the city to kind of draft a policy that they define the tips as wages, and if there's ever a challenge to that policy as to whether it creates an ethical issue, it would be presented back in front of the commission. But our review is sort of limited to the concept itself. I do agree at an academic level, it's an interesting discussion as to how that gets defined, but until it is defined and until the practice is implemented, my view would be that this doesn't present currently an issue that the Ethics Commission needs to have any determination regarding. It's if I had to bet right now, it may be something that I think we'll see in the future, but I think just based on the advisory opinion that we have in front of us today, that request is not something presented necessarily within our jurisdiction or purview. I don't know whether there are any other thoughts. Commissioner Zimmerman, I think I've left you now as the only one who hasn't spoken. I don't know if you want to share anything.
Yeah, no, first of all, I've stopped by there, and it's a wonderful place that the city has, and it was kind of a nice stop in the Greenbelt. And it is awkward when you have young people who are, serving the public. And I can see that the challenge with keeping employees, where usually the turnover in restaurants is sitting at about 100%. So I think either, raising the hourly rate or doing something like this is prudent to keep the place going and consistent, and, at really the high setting that it has right at this time.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just say that I think your reasoning makes sense to me, and I appreciate that. I don't know if it's appropriate to be reading from the draft advisory opinion that we have, but I think what's contemplated is that the city, if it chooses to go forward on this path, would define tips as part of wages or salary. So it would, then clearly fall under the ethics code. In which case, any academic concern, I agree, would fall away. So I just wanted to raise that, but I don't see it as a significant obstacle to our analysis that we need to complete today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that at this time, this is probably not something that we can weigh into. But I am excited for future discussions if they come.
Well, first, thanks everyone for the input. It has been an interesting discussion. It presents an interesting issue. But I think we're kind of getting aligned that it's one that we're on the outside looking in at. So at this point, based on the discussion that we've had, I'd entertain a motion to decline the request for advisory opinion.
Motion to dismiss the advisory opinion.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a point of order? With the motion that's being contemplated, would that include the draft written dismissal that's before us being issued back to, I suppose, the requesting party, the Department of Parks and Rec?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hurwitz, I'm not actually sure. That's a question I might have to bring to others and vet. I don't know whether a dismissal or a determination not to issue a request would require a published opinion. But if it pleases the commission, staff could get an answer to that question, and at the next regularly scheduled commission meeting, if a published determination is expected or required, staff could prepare a draft based on the discussion and determination today from the commissioners.
I guess that depends, Commissioner Hurwitz, on whether your request is just out of a matter of kind of discourse and politeness, or whether it goes into the record as it relates to our involvement. If it would change our course one way or another, I think we can have the discussion that Patrick just suggested and direct staff or request staff to go that route. But otherwise, if it's just a question where we'd kind of like to know the answer for future reference, we can still entertain the motion and just ask for that update at the following meeting.
I think that would be fine, Mr. Chair. And my only purpose in raising the issue is whether I don't want the Parks and Rec department to receive just a dismissal. Maybe that's the way it has to be, but maybe there's a way for them to understand the reasoning that we went through to help them make their own decisions about next steps. That's why I raise it, and no other reason.
Mr. Chair, if that is something that the commissioners want, staff would be more than willing to draft a determination or a document that captures the discussion, and then at the next regularly scheduled meeting, the commissioners could review and discuss that draft and make any edits and ultimately provide a final determination if it's the intent of the commission to include some of the rationale and some of the decision-making points.
Well, at this point, if that's something the rest of the commission desires, we'd entertain a motion to decline the request for advisory opinion with an instruction to staff to draft a response to the requester, including some of the reasoning as to why the commission declined the request at today's meeting.
And Mr. Chair, I don't want to create work for the commission that's unnecessary. So I suppose the motion I would contemplate making would just be to decline to address a request, and then through motion or not, just request staff to advise us as to whether we should be providing reasoning as part of those denials or whether there are reasons not to. I can understand why there would be reasons not to. And that's something we can maybe take up at the next meeting when we see the staff's perspective as to how these types of declinations should be made.
Okay. Do we have a formal motion then?
I think my formal motion still stands, Mr. Chair. Motion to dismiss.
Do we have a second?
I second, Mr. Chair.
Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Church.
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
Pruitt.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
I,
Four in favor, motion, all in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you, everyone. It doesn't look like we have anything else on the agenda today other than our special business. An update on I noticed our agenda doesn't say hotline any longer, just inbox activity. Has there been a change to how we're receiving requests, or if not, can we get an update, Patrick, on hotline and inbox activity, please?
Mr. Chair, yes, I think it should say inbox and hotline activity. That said, there has been no hotline activity really at all in the past year to 3 years, but that's the update as far as the hotline activity. As far as the inbox, we get often travel requests that are explicitly carved out of the ethics kind of framework. Staff typically reviews and responds to those. I basically give that update every time because they do come into that inbox. Outside of that, the inbox did receive a few substantive questions, none of which, other than the request for advisory opinion that was discussed, none of which blossomed into formal requests to the commission. There was a question about a potential candidate that was being interviewed for a position, and it was sort of a question about a potential conflict of interest if a particular candidate were selected. Would they have a conflict of interest at that point? And all that occurred there was a request for a little bit more info, which was never, there was no response from the asking party. So as far as I'm aware, that never panned out into anything beyond an initial question. There was also a question submitted to the inbox from an employee about their spouse considering a job offer elsewhere outside of the city. And typically what happens when a request or a question comes into the inbox is there will be some sort of high level staff response from the city attorney's office, and every single response includes a direction on how to bring this request to the commission. And they do not issue any formal ethics determinations, but that person who submitted the request or the question to the inbox didn't ultimately submit anything to the commission. And then there was one question that came into the inbox about attending an event where lunch would be provided, which did not turn into a request to the commission either. And that's all as far as substantive questions outside of travel. And then our typical occasional spam emails trying to invite us to strange conferences or sell us things.
Well, thank you for the update, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Looking through the rest of our agenda, that is all we had today. So unless there's any further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
A second.
Roll call vote, please.
Church,
Aye.
Howarth,
Aye.
Pruitt,
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
We're done. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone. Miss seeing you all in person.